What is an emotion? And what is the difference between an emotion and everything else that goes on in our mind?
That's a very big question. Uh, there is no gold standard as yet for an emotion. There is no single thing which must be present, and if present means there is an emotion. I expect 30 or 40 years from now we will have the tools to look inside the brain and be able to tell when a particular circuit is activated, and that will be the gold standard because that's what's running the emotions. But now what we have to rely on is what we see and hear and what people do. And so I have a list of about, I think there are 15 things which are present in most emotions. Emotions are not private in the sense that nearly all emotions have a signal in the face and the voice that informs other members of your species and some other species to some extent as to what emotion you're feeling. So the emotions that are universal to our species are anger, fear, sadness, disgust, contempt, surprise, and enjoyment. Now I break enjoyment down into 12 different emotions. I'll give you an example. Relief and amusement are both enjoyable. They are as different from each other as fear is from anger. But even though you know when I'm afraid or angry, you don't know the target and you don't know the trigger. You usually assume, most of us are egocentric, so we usually assume I triggered it and I'm the target. But that may not be the case. Emotions do not tell you their trigger or their target, they just tell you what they are. So that's the first characteristic. The second is what triggers your emotion is a very fast process that is totally out of consciousness. You have what I think of as a scanner that's continually looking in the environment for things that resemble what has triggered your emotions in the past. Either the long ago past, your ancestral past, that which you've inherited, or what you've learned in the process of growing up. What you learn in the process of growing up becomes as automatic as what you inherit innately. So this automatic process occurs in less than a 25th of a second. Think of a near-miss car accident. If you thought about what to do, you'd be dead. But what you do is extremely complex. You see the angle, you compute the speed of it, you calculate how much you need to turn the wheel, hit the brake, hit the gas pedal or not, and you do that all with no thought, no conscious thought. Extremely complex appraisals that are triggering. After it's over, if you survive, you then realize, boy, was I afraid. But if you had to think, if consciousness was part of the emotion system, then you wouldn't have been able to deal with saber-toothed tigers, you wouldn't be able to drive on freeways, you wouldn't be able to deal with sudden threat. So it's a blessing but a curse. The curse is that you often become emotional and you don't know why, and you don't know what it's about. And it's about things that you may have mislearned or learned incorrectly. Or maybe you had parents who didn't care about you, and so you've got a whole bunch of triggers that aren't being of much use to you, and you can't. The goal to improve emotional life is to bring consciousness, awareness into your emotions, so you realize when your emotions are being triggered, and you can choose whether to engage and how to engage. That's a very difficult thing to do because nature didn't want you to do it. But there are exercises you can do. So I was in the characteristics. So universal signal, automatic appraisal. Emotions can occur very briefly and they can last a brief amount of time. You can be angry one moment and sad the next. They can change from second to second. Another characteristic is that we don't choose to be emotional. It happens to us. That's how we experience it. That's the meaning of the word. It's that it happens to us. Now with entertainment, we, to some extent, we say, oh, that's a good tearjerker. Read that book, you'll get a good cry. But that's a very recent invention. And most of the time, we don't. There are many paths for triggering an emotion. Memory is one. Imagination is another. the most common is the behavior and actions of other people. But changes in the weather, a tornado will trigger an emotion, as will an earthquake. I've only lived through one major earthquake, but it did trigger an emotion in a lot of people. So you can become emotional about almost anything. So emotions are involuntary. They produce involuntary changes. You don't choose what to do. You can choose to try to recognize the impulse before the action, and if you can't do that, and that's a very hard thing to do, but there are exercises that can help you. You can at least recognize when you're becoming emotional. So you don't continue to act emotionally until someone says, "What's up? What's happening to you?" I'm sure we've all had that experience that somebody says, "Gee, you seem awfully upset," and that's the first time you were aware of it. It wasn't that you were asleep, but no part of yourself was observing yourself to say, "Ooh, I'm getting terrified. I'm getting angry. I'm feeling discouraged." Nothing. Well, again, that's a problem, bringing awareness into the picture. And there are exercises that can help you. I mentioned earlier that I distinguish a number of different types of happiness, all of which share a single expression in the face, which is the smile, a particular type of smile that involves the muscle that orbits the eye as well. The voice is the primary signal system that distinguishes one of these 12 enjoyable emotions from another. Think about the difference between the sound of amusement and the sound of relief. They sound very differently. People smile with both. So it's not the face, but it's the voice which tells you which enjoyable emotion. Emotions, every emotion can be enacted in a way that's constructive or destructive. And in my series of discussions with the Dalai Lama, we clarified and agreed upon this, that the criteria for a constructive emotional engagement is that it furthers collaboration and cooperation with that person and has some benefit to a wider society.